I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Was it though? All right, well, as you just watched, Bakari Sellers, David Axelrod, who had clarity before the election but seems to have lost that clarity after the election, Joy Reid, Sunny Hostin, they're all blaming Kamala Harris's loss on the character of the American electorate. And I think that's...
Brace yourself for a bold and uncompromising critique as Anna Kasparian delivers a scorching takedown of The View's Sunny Hostin and her take on Kamala Harris's political challenges. From exposing the pitfalls of lazy identity politics to calling out media elites who remain hopelessly disconnected from the real issues affecting everyday Americans, Anna leaves no stone unturned. Her fearless analysis dives deep into the consequences of tone-deaf narratives and misplaced priorities that continue to alienate voters, pushing them toward populist figures who claim to champion their concerns. In this breakdown, we'll explore how political elites and mainstream pundits are missing the mark and why voters are demanding substance over empty rhetoric. If you're fed up with surface-level politics and tired promises, this is a conversation you won't want to miss.
I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Was it though? All right, well, as you just watched, Bakari Sellers, David Axelrod, who had clarity before the election but seems to have lost that clarity after the election, Joy Reid, Sunny Hostin, they're all blaming Kamala Harris's loss on the character of the American electorate. And I think that's a big mistake. Because when you do that, number one, it's bad analysis and it's incredibly lazy. But number two, it only works to shield or provide cover for the mistakes that the Democratic Party has been
voted
making.
Against their reproductive health freedoms. And why do you think Latino men voted in favor of someone that's going to says he's going to deport the majority of his community?
White women like being called uneducated white women. I think the economy matters, national security matters. But when you put people in these boxes, I think that's a takeaway from this race.
We have to look at the demographics.
Also, I think it's worth noting that, there are some red states that attempted to ban abortion or severely restrict abortion, but the people in those states voted in favor of ballot initiatives to legalize abortion, to reverse the negative impact of the reversal of Roe v. Wade. So saying that people are voting against their best interests kind of doesn't make sense when it comes to the reproductive rights issue, because what was Kamala Harris supposed to do? She was going, let's say she got elected. She would have come into office with a Senate controlled by Republicans. And I don't know, has it already been determined? Have Democrats lost the House?
Yeah, almost certainly.
Okay, so basically a Republican-controlled Congress. How the hell was she supposed to pass or codify reproductive rights on a national level? It wasn't going to happen, and it wouldn't have happened if Democrats had control.
Anna Kasparian has called out The View and its hosts Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Whoopi Goldberg for their shallow and divisive take on Kamala Harris's political challenges. According to Kasparian, their narrative, which attributes Harris's struggles to racism, sexism, and cultural resentment, completely misses the mark. She argues that this oversimplification not only dismisses the complexities of voter behavior but also serves as a convenient shield for the Democratic Party's policy failures. By reducing Harris's challenges solely to her identity as a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish man, Kasparian contends that The View is ignoring the real issues driving voter dissatisfaction. Kasparian argues that The View's hosts perpetuate a lazy, surface-level analysis that distracts from the substantive issues voters actually care about. She doesn't hold back, calling out the Democratic Party's chronic failure to deliver meaningful reforms for working-class Americans. Whether it's economic justice, affordable healthcare, or reproductive rights, Democrats have consistently fallen short of their promises. Instead of confronting these shortcomings head-on, the party clings to outdated establishment strategies that alienate voters and ignore the populist momentum fueling figures like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Kasparian's message is clear: If the Democratic Party hopes to regain voters' trust, it must abandon identity politics and focus on addressing the real economic and social struggles faced by everyday Americans.
Going to happen. She's not going to steamroll the Senate filibuster, which requires 60 votes in order to pass legislation. It wasn't going to happen. So, I think what Alyssa Farah-Griffin said there, and I never thought I would say this, but she's right. She's right. And I also think there's an issue with the way liberals feel free to just demonize white people in general, right? It turns people off. And if they're constantly told over and over again that they're the enemy, they're everything that's wrong with this country, every bad thing that's happened here is because of, the white European settlers and the white people who are here. If one party is telling them they're the bad guys and they're not wanted and they're the root of every problem in the country, do you think that part of the electorate's gonna vote for you?
Right, but if you think that's the main reason that she lost, you've misdiagnosed the problem. The main reason she lost is because Democrats don't deliver and they run establishment campaigns and not populist campaigns. And this is so stark because there's only two people in the country among the politicians that have run as populists. One is a fake populist, Donald Trump. One's a real populist, that's Bernie Sanders, right? And both of them had miraculous runs. And the media acknowledges, oh my God, but we thought Bernie was a joke. We thought he was gonna get 1% against Hillary Clinton. He got 48%, nearly won the whole damn thing. And in 2020, he won the first 3 primary states. Oh my God, that's amazing, right? Donald Trump in this miraculous political comeback wins the second time. Those are the only 2 people that have ever run as populists in my lifetime for president. And they both did spectacularly well. Every establishment, Republican and Democrat that runs gets clowned, right? But they can't figure, they're like, oh, no, that's not it. And remember, Bernie's on the left, Trump's on the right. So it's not even a left-right thing. It's definitely not a racial thing. Bernie's terrific on race, Trump's terrible on race. But they both won. Oh, I'm sorry, Bernie didn't win ultimately, but he had a miraculous rise up in the polls. And so, if you're looking at it in an unbiased way, clearly the American people are saying we don't like the elitism. And then here's a bunch of elites on television who are almost all millionaires telling you it's your fault.
Anna Kasparian casts a harsh spotlight on the growing disconnect between media elites and the everyday voters they claim to represent. She argues that modern journalism, once a bastion for working-class voices, has been hijacked by Ivy League-educated elites more focused on symbolic victories than meaningful change. According to Kasparian, shows like The View epitomize this detachment, treating politics as a game of optics rather than tackling the economic and social realities affecting most Americans. Rather than addressing critical issues like stagnant wages, skyrocketing healthcare costs, and soaring rents, the media fixates on shallow narratives tailored to their insulated bubble of viewers. Kasparian draws a stark contrast between the populist energy behind figures like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump and the establishment politics of the Democratic Party, which continues to alienate voters by prioritizing image over substance. Both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump resonated with voters by rejecting elitism and addressing genuine concerns like economic insecurity and systemic inequality, albeit from vastly different ideological perspectives. Kasparian notes that their success underscores a profound voter disillusionment with the political status quo. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party continues to cling to establishment strategies, stubbornly failing to adapt to the populist energy that has reshaped the political landscape. Kasparian warns that unless Democrats acknowledge this shift and prioritize delivering meaningful change, they risk further alienating the very voters they need to win back.
That leads to problem number 2, which is what Anna was talking about. If you keep insulting, by the way, not only some people, which they won't vote for you, but also the majority of people in this country. Do you think that's a good political strategy to say to 3/4 of the country that's white, you guys are the problem. It's your fault we lost. And it's your fault for being so uneducated. And like so in the beginning, Sonny Hostin was talking about, black woman and with a Jewish husband. I had this, wait, are you saying that Jewish people can't do well in this country in politics? Because there's that stereotype also exists. What are you talking about? Bernie Sanders, again, legendary in how well he did. Jamie Raskin, one of the most popular figures in politics. And Josh Shapiro, an incredibly successful and popular governor in Pennsylvania. What are you guys talking about? It doesn't have anything to do with them being Jewish or black or anything like that. It has to do with the substance of their campaigns. But people on TV hate substance.
Yeah, it's lazy politics. It's boring, lazy, dumb politics. Okay, so could it be any black woman? Can it be Candace Owens? If Candace Owens is running for president, do we have to support her because we need to elect a black woman? Like, what does she stand for? What does she represent? Is she gonna serve the best interests for the electorate? Like, what are we talking about here? And look, I think the biggest problem is that when it comes to the field of journalism, it used to be dominated by working class people, okay? A lot of them didn't even get a college degree, right? You didn't need a college degree to be a journalist. But now journalism is dominated by wealthy, Ivy League educated individuals who live nice, cushy, comfortable lives and are kind of detached from the realities that the electorate has to deal with. And so when you're that comfortable, I'm just gonna keep it real, you're really less concerned about the policy and more concerned about like the optics, and like you treat politics like it's just a fun sports thing, right? Like, oh, I want my team to win, but you get to have these luxury beliefs, okay, where the content of the campaign doesn't really matter. What the candidate is promising to do for the American people doesn't really matter. It just makes you feel good to see a biracial woman with a Jewish husband in the White House, and that reigns supreme.
Anna Kasparian takes a scalpel to the hypocrisy within mainstream media rhetoric, exposing how narratives often shift based on convenience rather than principle. She highlights Whoopi Goldberg's inconsistent stance on figures like Liz Cheney, who was once condemned for her staunch conservative positions but later praised as a hero of democracy for opposing Donald Trump. Kasparian argues that this selective framing reveals a deeper problem within media discourse, a focus on political theater rather than consistent values or meaningful policy discussions. By prioritizing partisan optics over substance, the media perpetuates shallow narratives that fail to address the real concerns of everyday Americans. Anna Kasparian calls out the hypocrisy within mainstream media, highlighting how figures like Whoopi Goldberg have flip-flopped on politicians such as Liz Cheney, once criticized for her family's policies, now celebrated for her so-called moral courage. Kasparian argues that this kind of opportunistic narrative shift underscores how media elites prioritize maintaining their preferred storylines over offering honest and consistent analysis. She also takes aim at the media's tendency to demonize large swaths of voters, particularly white women, by framing them as uneducated or regressive. Kasparian contends that this divisive rhetoric not only alienates a significant voter bloc but also conveniently deflects from addressing the genuine concerns of these groups, such as economic insecurity and healthcare access. Her critique serves as a call for a media landscape that prioritizes substance and inclusivity over shallow, divisive narratives. Anna Kasparian critiques the media's obsession with identity politics, arguing that this fixation detracts from meaningful policy debates on crucial issues like economic stability, healthcare, and other urgent concerns. She questions the validity of supporting a candidate solely based on their identity, offering a hypothetical scenario. If Candace Owens were to run for president, would her identity alone warrant support regardless of her policies? Kasparian's point is clear: symbolic victories cannot replace the need for candidates who genuinely serve the interests of the electorate. She urges the media and political leaders to move beyond identity-based narratives and instead prioritize tangible policy solutions that address the everyday struggles of working-class Americans.
Want to see their quality of life increase, improve, and that hasn't been happening for a lot of Americans, and they're angry. Okay, yes, there's a level of wanting to retaliate against the establishment politicians, and Donald Trump is the perfect figure to utilize for that retaliation. And I think that there's a lot of that going on.
Oh, 100%. We had Dan Holloway, who's a conservative from Drinking Bros, but he's not your old school conservative, right? He's a right-wing populist, and he had a great analogy. He said, we know he's a bull in a china shop, but we hate the china shop. Mm-hmm. That's why we sent in the bull, right? And the china shop they're referring to is the establishment, corruption, etc. Now, Trump does his own corruption, and while he's in that China shop, he goes to the wrong part and tries to destroy the Constitution too. We know that, but at the same time, that is the part of the reason why he won. You got to understand that. But when I was talking about the glitch in the Matrix, the Cheneys are a perfect example, because these same actors just a little while ago were telling you how awful and terrible and evil Dick and Liz Cheney were. But now that we're in Act 3 of the play, they've now turned around 100% and telling you about that same crew. The View said Liz Cheney had incredible moral courage.
She had a wonderful moral core. That was the phrase used by Whoopi Goldberg in particular. And she was talking about how, she would like to see Liz Cheney be Kamala Harris's attorney general. I mean, Whoopi Goldberg might have cost Kamala Harris the election. Let's keep it real.
Okay, no, that's not what, but it's too small a part. But so, guys, back then they said torture was terrible. I can't believe the CIA is doing torture. Dick Cheney started that program at the CIA. Today, fast forward, and Whoopi Goldberg saying in that same episode that Liz Cheney maybe should be the head of the CIA.